That night, I saw dead people. Actually, it was two dead people, Moses and Elijah. I've had a lot of interesting things happen to me in my life, but the night that I had that vision is one that ranks up at the very top for me. First of all, some background to the event. It was my first year out of college, and I was teaching and coaching at Chittard High School. Now, any of you who know a first-year teacher will know what I'm going to be talking about. I didn't hardly sleep. I was grading papers and eating at the same time. My friends wondered if I was still alive. First year of teaching is more of a nightmare than anything else. And I was living that nightmare out daily. I told myself throughout the fall that if I could make it to Christmas, then life would be okay again. And everything would return back to normal. However, this night, I found myself on the last night of Christmas break, ready to head back in to the battle. It was a low point in my life, which probably is a statement about how blessed I am to have that be a point where I was truly in despair. But nonetheless, the despair for me was real. And I was contemplating going back to all of the children who I had been dreading going to see for the last 2 weeks. I had been kind of, throughout the fall, in the few moments that I had to myself, because I knew I was going to the seminary, I had started to kind of really take my spiritual life seriously. Started to read and pray more and actually spend some time in the catechism and in the scriptures. So in the midst of my despair about having to return back to school the next day, I finally at one point went to my bedroom, laid down on my bed, and I remember saying to God, I have got to know if you are real. I'm not getting up from this bed until you reveal yourself to me. He did not disappoint. I felt instantly in that moment, my eyes were closed, and I felt like I was given a vision. And it was one from today's gospel, standing on the top of a mountain, looking out at a distance, seeing who I knew to be was Jesus, with his back to me, and he was conversing with Moses and Elijah, just as it was described in today's gospel. And also could sense the presence of the Father there speaking with Jesus through a cloud. For a while they didn't really pay any attention to me, and I remember kind of being so struck with awe and trying to figure out what exactly was going on that I was okay with that. But then at one point, I remember distinctly Christ turning and facing me and kind of walking towards me, and at one point basically entering into me. At that point, I was overcome with an amazing sense of love, peace, and joy that I knew did not come from myself or any kind of psychological attempt to cope with my stress. I felt in a very real way Christ reveal himself to me, and I knew in that moment that he was real. Now that vision, or the effects of that, lingered throughout the night. And I remember getting up and walking around the house, kind of humming quietly some songs from church. I'm sure my brother thought I had gone insane. But nonetheless, when I lay down to bed again that night, I remember having a sense in which kind of it started to fade, and the effects of the vision started to kind of wear off. But they nonetheless lingered for about a week. But at some point, about a week afterwards, the effects, the glow, had completely worn away. But I still was a very powerful moment for me in my life. Now I share all this not to say, first and foremost at all, or not to say at all, that I think that I'm special, because this happened to me. In fact, preaching about this at the last two Masses, many people came up and shared similar experiences. And I think most people at some point in their life have an experience like that. It might not happen the same way. It might not play out that way. It may be through the death of a loved one. But there's always, whatever it is, whatever triggers it, whatever causes it for each person, I think the effects are the same, and that most people at some point have a distinct experience of the reality of Christ. Not Him veiled in the Eucharist, not Him in a distant way, but in a way in which we know without a doubt that He is real. We experience, I think, at some point in our lives, most of us, what the apostles experience in today's gospel. A glimpse, a peek behind the curtain, a chance to see what the saints and the angels see in heaven. Christ in all of His glory. Mother Teresa had a very profound experience at the beginning of her life, or in her mid-20s, that encouraged her to start her religious order. She went for almost 50 years never having that experience again. We often struggle, I think, when we go through those experiences, whatever form it takes, we try to do a couple of things. And I know I did this myself, and I struggled for a couple of years. We first of all tell ourselves we did something to make it go away, that it was our fault. And we think then that God is judging us and is now mad at us again, because otherwise we tell ourselves He would be revealing Himself to us again. We also very oftentimes, I think, try to recreate the scenario in which that happened. I can imagine the apostles, a couple of weeks after today's gospel, trying to trick Jesus to come back up the mountain with them, wanting to see if it would happen again, wanting another glimpse. I found I struggled with this for a couple of years, trying to put all the pieces together. But one of the things that helped me a lot was the coming across the writings of St. John of the Cross. I've shared before how he has helped me in my own spiritual journey very much. And he speaks about these types of visions 500 years ago. He says that many people obviously have some kind of experience like this in their life, but that it often causes problems. The types of problems that I mentioned just a moment ago. A need to try and recreate them. A desire to chase after that experience and to have it again. It becomes almost like a drug for a person. And we hope to try and recreate those experiences again in our lives, but we always fail. So we have to ask ourselves then, why does something like the Transfiguration go away? Why does it not happen all the time? Why can't we see Christ in His heavenly glory 24 hours a day? There's a famous phrase that you've probably heard before. Christ loves us as we are, so the phrase begins, and we know that's true. We hear that over and over again in our scriptures. Christ loves us as we are, unconditionally. But the saying also goes, He loves us too much, though, to let us stay as we are. He loves us too much to let us stay as we are. If we were beholding Christ in all of His transfigured glory 24 hours a day, we would have no cause for conversion, no reason to change, no reason to do anything other than be in His presence. But when we're not in His presence, or when we think we're not in His presence, when we don't see Him in His transfigured glory, that is impetus for us, if we let it, to try and change, to try and experience conversion. We hear this reading, I think, from today's gospel in Lent, not so much to focus on the vision, the spiritual joy that the apostles felt. I think the key for us and why the church gives us this reading today is for the last couple of lines. The apostles head down the mountain after the glow has worn off. They head back into normal, everyday routine. But nonetheless, Christ is there with them, even though He's no longer glowing, even though He's no longer radiating, even though we cannot see Moses or Elijah or his father. He's there as an ordinary man, walking alongside the apostles as they head down the mountain into their everyday life. That's what Lent is for as well. Lent is an opportunity to head down the mountain, to spend time in the desert. Not because God is punishing us, not to prove that we can endure, but so that we can spend time removing those things that keep us from Him. We experience Lent as an opportunity to draw ourselves closer to that transfigured Christ and to work at conversion. He withdraws His vision of Himself from us, hopefully encouraging us to work for it, to draw ourselves closer to Him, to remove those obstacles out of the way so that we may see Him one day as He truly is for eternity. Christ walked with the apostles down the mountain in today's gospel, standing beside them. And He walks beside us now on our Lenten path as an ordinary person, sometimes even for us unable to see Him. And He comes to us again veiled in this Eucharist, in His Eucharistic presence. May we be nourished by His presence in the Eucharist. May it draw us on and encourage us on to continue and pursue after Him so that we may one day behold Him as He truly is.